Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
...2024 year. We got a great lineup for you. Man, I watched a lot of football last night. I think most everybody stayed up pretty late watching all the college football. The first one, the Rose Bowl, Alabama goes out in overtime to Michigan. Michigan's a really good football team. I'm a big fan of Jim Harbaugh. I'm sick and tired of everybody going after this guy. And I'm not saying he's a victim or whatever, but I don't like him because he's confident, and confidence turns people off. It scares people, makes them uncomfortable. Well, we need more Jim Harbaughs in coaching. You'd love it if he was your coach. I can guarantee you. His players are absolutely dialed in to what they're doing. It really is a lot of fun to watch them play. And again, Mitch Davis, the MitchDavisShow.com, joins us in the first segment. We joined in the second segment by Doug Dean, AU Dose. Jordan Hill, top of hour number 2, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia. And they may have just scored again. I mean, Florida State, okay, they had an argument. I can understand they were frustrated they didn't make it to the playoffs. But 31 players quit on that team. That's a culture problem. They got to fix that. And I'm looking forward to having Johnny Ballpark Franks on the show to talk about that. But you got to show up and fight. You're representing your university's brand. Inexcusable. Georgia, they were out to prove a point. You're damn right they were, that the playoff committee should have invited them to the college football playoff. And they didn't. Best 4 teams, I thought, were Texas and Michigan, Alabama, and Georgia. Well, I can tell you this much. Washington proved last night that they definitely, and they are. They're one of the 2 best now. So we'll get into all of that, folks. We're here 25 times a month at least, 300 plus times a year. We love doing this. Sidelines. Happy New Year. Merry New Year, whatever you want to call it. It is going to be an absolutely awesome year. And Mitch Davis, pretty late night last night, watching all those games and then the post game and all like that. But the sun actually came up this morning here in Memphis. It's beautiful. We absolutely love it, and love to get your takeaways on what all happened in these games because, damn, I don't remember 2 playoff games back-to-back being that good in the 10-year history of the CFP. Do you?
Rob, thank you so much for having me on. It's a privilege. I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to everybody. Haven't been on here in a week or so. So, Rob, it was a great playoffs. The SEC is out of the championship game. It feels weird. I heard your comments about Jim Harbaugh. I can tell you right now, the reason why I don't like him is because he is a proven cheating Yankee asshole. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying that. But he is about as snake oilsman as they come. And I can't respect that. If you want to win, that's fine. If you want to go about it, do it the right way, that's fine too. But Jim Harbaugh has been found time and time again to be a cheater. Just like I don't like Brian Kelly because he had a kid basically die underneath his watch because negligence from his coaching staff and what happened there at Notre Dame. So that's how we're going to start the show. But it's good for the state of Mississippi to get that Peach Bowl victory. Happy for Lane Kiffin. Very excited about the future of the state of Mississippi football with Ole Miss, Mississippi State under Coach Jeff Levy, and then, of course, down at Southern Miss. I'm excited what they're building. So, Rob, I'll let you take it away, and I just had to give that comment on Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying I'm, hey, that he's the nicest guy in the world, but wherever he goes, he wins. And if you talk to coaches off the record, they will all tell you with a straight poker face that every coach and every coaching staff in America does any and everything they can to intercept signals and gain an advantage over their opponent. I think this is all a narrative fueled by Ryan Day and Ohio State because they've beaten Ohio State 3 years in a row. They hate one another. I don't think there's much respect in that rivalry. Not anymore. It's not like the Southern rivalries where there is respect. This one's a different one, but Harbaugh, look, if he's such a bad guy, why do his players love him the way they do? I'm sure you can find some guy some lonesome dove that doesn't like him.
The Nazi soldiers loved Hitler, so I mean,
well, that's a ridiculous comparison.
I hate to make that comparison, but I mean, come on now.
They didn't. They tried to kill him. You know that, but many times. But I'm just going to say that that Harbaugh, what he's doing at Michigan, they're really good. Look, they've been to the playoffs 3 years in a row. That is a good football team. And how many chances did Alabama have to put it away? It's funny listening to the guys on SEC Network talk about this roster, the weakest of any of his national championship teams. Again, that's like saying to a billionaire, your first 5 billion were a lot more fun than this last 5 billion. They're still loaded talent-wise, but they really didn't have the difference makers. Certainly not at wide receiver. Certainly not at running back. And how do you say that when they're 1, 2, or 3 in the nation in recruiting every year? It's all player development. But I don't see Nick Saban getting out of coaching. Not anywhere close. All these people want that to happen. I don't see it happening.
Rob, and what's interesting, if it did happen, and I put out a Twitter poll last night to kind of gauge the interest, and I'm going to pull that Twitter poll up. I asked if, when Nick Saban does retire, because the guy is, Rob, maybe you can correct me, I think he's 72, 72, which he's getting, sooner or later, he's gonna have to retire. It is what it is. I asked the Twitter poll, if and when Coach Saban retires, who replaces him? I put Kiffin, Sarkisian there at Texas, or the field, which means Dan Lanning or somebody like that. 56% of the votes voted for Coach Kiffin. I had over 100 different votes there on Mitch Davis _8 on Twitter. Over 56% said Lane Kiffin would be the replacement at Alabama. 32% of the over 100 people voted for the field, meaning Dan Lanning or somebody else. 12% voted for Sark. So it kind of tells you where Alabama fans and Alabama people are in general in terms of this job. I think Lane Kiffin is going to be a good fit. And, Rob, I do apologize. I got a new puppy over Christmas, and we're trying to –
Hey, who doesn't love puppies? Come on.
Oh, my gosh. She is – we've got her in the playpen right now, and she hates the stupid thing, but I don't have – we're crate training her and trying to teach her, so she's barking at her own shadow. So it's a golden retriever puppy, so if you hear a bark, it is little Willow Grace. We love her to death. So threw me off.
You love all dogs.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But I will say, kind of jumping over to Lane Kiffin, and I was around Ole Miss this past weekend for the Peach Bowl, and of course it was down in Oxford on Sunday for basketball. Ole Miss fans are believing that Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels can compete for a national championship next season. I think that really speaks to volumes as to why Alabama people would want him to come to Alabama once Nick Saban retires. He's been in the system. He knows Nick Saban. He's an offensive-minded guy. Bama fans are sick and tired of running quarterback draws on 4th and goal with a championship on the line, as Tommy Rees did last night. They want fresh blood. They want Joey Freshwater. Lane Kiffin, to me, would be the perfect fit at Alabama to lead the Crimson Tide into the uncharted waters post Nick Saban, because you have to get that kind of hire right. Whenever Nick Saban retires, whether that be this year or 5 years from now, you have to get that hire right, because when Bear Bryant retired, Alabama had to kind of revamp itself and kind of find a new identity. They don't want to go 20 years in the wilderness, like they did after Bear Bryant until they, won a national championship in '92. So Lane Kiffin would come in. He's a hell of a recruiter. He's a hell of a guy. Great coach. I mean, look what he's doing at Ole Miss. If he can do that at Ole Miss, he can win several national championships at the University of Alabama with all the resources at his disposal.
Well, it was 10 years, 82. Coach Bryant died, January 26th of 83. Within 30 days, he always said he'd probably croak within 30 days if he ever retired. But from 82 to 09, that 27-year period, there was only one national championship in that 27-year period until they won it again in 09. They had some strange times at Alabama. 97 to 07, that 11-year period where they lost on 8 different seasons, 5 games or more. So it can happen. But Lane Kiffin, I believe, is building his own identity at Ole Miss. Just because he coached 3 years at Alabama doesn't mean he wants to go back there. And Yancey Porter said it on the show a couple of weeks ago, Rebel Yell Hotline, and he's on with us every week. He said, Ole Miss is smelling blood. And Lane Kiffin, despite what a lot of people think, he's not myopically focused only on the offense. He knows, because his dad, Monty Kiffin, has taught him this, the importance of defense and defensive linemen. They got Walter Nolan coming in there. They got some good ones. They're stacking them up on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And the portal is where he's the king. That's what Kiffin does the best. But they got 4 of the top 5 players in Mississippi. I mean, they're not. I don't see Lane Kiffin wanting to go anywhere. I don't care what anybody says about it at Alabama. And he respects Lane. Lane Kiffin respects Nick Saban. And Nick Saban respects Lane Kiffin. He ushered him into the new era of college football.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point from Yancey Porter. But the problem is, when you're Ole Miss, you can only do so much at Ole Miss. I know now in the transfer portal and everything's different. I mean, you can get guys. I mean, we saw it with TCU last year with Max Duggan and all those other guys. TCU guys, you can get all the way to the national championship. You can also get, whatever you need to do in the transfer portal. The thing is, Alabama, it still carries that weight. We're in college basketball. The Blue Bloods are not exactly the Blue Bloods anymore because college basketball has changed. It takes one player to win a national championship. You don't have to have a roster full of guys. Alabama is still Alabama. Ohio State, Michigan are still Ohio State and Michigan. LSU is still LSU. That's why I'm still so flabbergasted that they hired Brian Kelly, because Brian Kelly is a joke. I mean, really, truthfully, he's a joke. But we won't go down that road. I am not a Brian Kelly fan. He didn't really do much in Notre Dame. He hasn't done anything at LSU in his first 2 seasons. So Alabama is still Alabama. I really, truthfully, when you watch the politicking that Lane Kiffin is doing and, him talking up Alabama and him, kind of hyping up that program, he's making a case to be the next head coach at Alabama. And I know most people will say otherwise, and you can talk to whatever, but, Lane Kiffin was heading out the door to go to Auburn. He just was. I mean, he was ready to go to Auburn. He was ready to take that job. Some things happen behind doors and, some things happen. It is what it is. Lane Kiffin wants that Alabama job. I mean, he does enough politicking and enough, hoorah to get to that Alabama position.
Well, I can assure you there are a lot of Mississippi State people that want him to get that job, and a lot of people at other schools that want him to get that job. But Lane Kiffin, I've always been a fan of his. I've always been a huge fan of what he does. I don't give a damn what he does off the field. That's the least of my concerns. I look at what he does on the field as a coach. But, they've got to get past – you got to beat Georgia and Alabama sometime. You can't go over there and lose 52-17 to Georgia and have people take you as a contender. But they tore up Penn State. And good God, James Franklin – well, okay, Ole Miss was number 11. They were number 10. But I'll call Ole Miss a top 10 team. He's now 3-18 as the Penn State coach, James Franklin I'm referring to, versus top 10 competition. This guy is obnoxious. Okay, he won 9 games 2 years in a row at Vanderbilt, which is just basically unheard of. It is in the modern era. Prior to the 1950s, they were really good. But I'll tell you something. These excuses. I mean, I listened to Hugh Freeze after the Auburn game, that embarrassing ass beating that Maryland put on Auburn. Yeah. And he goes, I just didn't have them prepared. That how'd you like it if you're a lawyer and you were on trial for murder and you ended up getting the death penalty and your attorney's like, well, I just wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. I had my mind on other things. Man, he gets paid $6.5 million a year. And in the world that we live in, people don't care about anything. They just look at how much money you're making and they project, okay, you got to be a great coach. You got to win. He's focused on recruiting. He's got a number 7 class, which is good for 4th in the SEC behind Georgia, Bama, Texas, and Auburn. Oklahoma's like 9th in the country. Could get better in February if they could flip Ryan Williams, the 5-star from Saraland, who's been committed to Alabama for a year. But I'll tell you what, Hugh Freeze, the New Mexico State game, that embarrassing, ridiculous rushing 2, playing patty cake at the end of the Alabama game, that's inexcusable. And then the loss, just to be embarrassed like that, down 21-0 before a lot of people, had their first drink at the game Saturday, inexcusable. And you got to wonder, I know there's a talent gap at Auburn. This is the weakest Auburn roster you've seen in 40-plus years. Trust me, it's weak. And so if you're beating Auburn now, get your licks in because things are about to change. But you got to but also you had some guys quit on the team, and there was a lack of effort. Don't say opt out. I mean, Florida State's the worst I've ever seen, and look what happened to them. They've damaged that's brand damaging, Mitch. That's embarrassing. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. And Mike Norvell, I mean, did he start all that with his constant whining? Look, you get left out, it sucks. But you fight your way back in, don't you? Not lay down and let that happen.
Yeah, and Robin, and I have to let me think how I can word this. I need to be very careful what I say about Auburn. I can't. I won't go into much detail. My relationship with people at Auburn. I'll put it like this. I've known Coach Freeze for a very long time. Dating back 20, 25 years. He's going to win. Don't read too much into that. He's going to win. It's going to be okay. I get Auburn people are frustrated. I get people are very annoyed by that comment. I get it. Give him time. That dude, trust me, he rebuilt Briarcrest football into a perennial power and laid the groundwork for Briarcrest to win several state championships even after he left. At Ole Miss, he took Ole Miss. He laid the groundwork for what Lane Kiffin is doing now. He took Ole Miss to their first New Year's Six bowl game in a very long time. I mean, I know they went Cotton Bowl, but Cotton Bowl back then was a BCS subdivision. He took them to the first New Year's Six at the Peach Bowl in 2014. I think in year 2. He's going to win. He won at Liberty. He won conference championship and got to a lot of great bowl games. He won at Arkansas State. Took Arkansas State to heights. The only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And yes, he should have been more laser focused into the bowl game. I get that. But he's looking at the bigger picture. And I think I really, truly, knowing Coach Freeze on a very, very, very personal level, he's going to win. That is where I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to. I can't say too much. Hopefully, my guy Mark Gatson is kind of getting what I'm dropping down here. Hugh Freeze is going to win, and he is going to win a lot at Auburn. But you got to take one step at a time. You got to eat. The only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. He is out recruiting to make Auburn better. Right now, that first bowl game, it matters to the fans, and I get that. You want to win that first bowl game with the first-year head coach. You want to do that. That's great. That's a lot of fun. Trust me, as a fan, I've been in that position. But Hugh Freeze is a bigger picture type guy. He's figuring out, now he's back in the SEC. Because remember, he got fired back in 17, I think, 16 or 17.
July of 17.
Yeah, July of 17. So when he got fired from Ole Miss, which, comparing Ole Miss to Liberty and Auburn to Liberty is night and day. There is no comparison. Now that he's back in the SEC, he is kind of having to relearn, recruiting stages because now recruiting high school players is important and it's a great deal. And you got put a lot of emphasis on getting that kid from Saraland and other places. But the focus now in college recruiting is now in the transfer portal. And so he is trying to relearn, yes, I can recruit high school players. I can go in those living rooms and recruit those high school players. But he is having to learn, now I have to go into the transfer portal because when guys were going in the transfer portal, there's not many guys that were saying, hey, I want to go to Liberty University and play. It is what it is. They were looking for bigger and better opportunities elsewhere. They're not looking to go to Liberty University. And also you throw into that, this is kind of the first real year of NIL and of players making. And we're not going to get in that conversation today. I've got like 9 minutes in this segment. I could spend all day talking about that, but he is having to kind of reteach himself and get with his mentors. And his mentors are Nick Saban and Gus Malzahn and other guys who have really done a lot of wonders. I mean, look at what Gus Malzahn is doing down there at UCF, and look what he did there in his first 2-3 years at Auburn. Coach Freeze is really having to kind of reteach himself, relearn himself, but also, handle the publicity and the politics of being a high-level SEC coach again. It's going to take time. It's going to take 2, 3, maybe 4 years to get back on that level, but you got to be patient. You got to be patient. He is relearning everything from ground, because when he got fired at Ole Miss in July of 2017, there was no NIL, there was no bowl game opt-outs, there was no transfer portal. You gotta take it slow. He's gonna get there, because trust me, when it's all said and done, Coach Freeze is gonna return Auburn back to the promised land and win a couple, if not 3 or 4 national championships there on the plane. So I'll leave it at that, but hopefully your listeners can read into what I'm saying there.
Well, I'll tell you what, and I'm just look, my take is this, and I've got a lot of comments coming in. Hugh Freeze, all Auburn fans ask is that you win every game, and that's what every fan base should ask for. You should expect to win every game. If you're okay with, will we play? There are no moral victories on this level. When you're paying the kind of money, if the bowl games don't matter and they're just exhibitions, then Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Athletic Department, get your damn checkbook out and refund everybody's hotel costs, travel costs, and ticket costs. Because if you're going to have a sorry-ass effort like what I saw Saturday, that's inexcusable. That is absolutely not allowable. And I'm going to tell you, my advice to Hugh Freeze would be, don't listen to Gus Malzahn. I don't care. They're friends, but still, you talked about the early years of Gus. Yeah. I mean, 2013, he played for the national championship and they lost. The next year, they were on top of the world. November 8th of 2014, number 3 in the CFP rankings, and they lost to an A&M team they should have blown out. And it was just that year after year after year.
Bro, let me ask you this,
he didn't change and adapt. I just look around at and I know the resources Auburn has. That's why it gets so frustrating. You can't go easy on these people. But I want Freeze to succeed.
Let me ask you this. Yeah. And Mari Gatson and you and everybody at Auburn knows that I truly love Auburn. I had the greatest experience that I've ever had at a college football game at Auburn. The fans were tremendous, and I'm looking forward to going back when Mississippi State or Ole Miss play down there again. It's a hell of a trip. I love Auburn. But how many national championships has Auburn won in the modern college football era?
Well, if you count, here's the way I look at it. Auburn blew their opportunity to start claiming national championships the way everybody else does. So in the modern era, that's the 50s. That's when the modern era of college football. That's kind of when it changed. They won one in 57. They won one in a lot of polls in 58. They won one in 83 when Miami jumped from 5th to 1st and they were 3rd and they won their game. 93, but they didn't play in the SEC championship game, but a lot of people gave it to them in 93. 04, they got left out. 2010, they did win it outright. 2013, they choked it away on that last, but that was Gus Malzahn. They were on top of the world. They had the cat by the tail and they blew it. So they could claim 10 in their history, yet they claimed 2. And that's why it's like, well, how many have they won in the modern era? Yeah, they got that one in 2010. And they played for it again in 2013, but they should expect more. Auburn should never, ever. Auburn should never feel inferior to anyone. But there is a lot of this woe is me, Horatio Alger mentality out there that I don't like. I think you should expect to win in everything you do.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but when Texas and Oklahoma come to the SEC, it's going to make it a hell of a lot harder to win a national championship.
For everybody.
It is. And really, truthfully, I was talking to my father-in-law. We're watching the game last night, the Alabama and Michigan game last night. And we said that, he's a Mississippi State graduate. He's a diehard Bulldog. And he said, hey, as a Mississippi State fan, I feel the same way as a Kentucky fan. And also my former school that I went to and everything, I'm proud to be a Memphis Tiger. As a Memphis Tiger and as a Kentucky Wildcat, there is no way in hell that Kentucky or Memphis will ever win a national championship in football. They just won't, because the system is set up to where Georgia, Alabama, your Texases, your Michigans, your Ohio State, that's who's gonna win it all. I mean, those are the programs that are gonna win it all. But college football to me is a lot different for other people, because college football to me is more about the day-to-day excitement, the Paul Feinbaum shows, the college game days, the SEC Nations that you get to attend on each and every Saturday. Yes, I would love to win a national championship, and yes, it would mean the absolute world to me to get to that point with Memphis or Kentucky.
Yeah.
But, Rob, the greatest memory that I ever had in college football, in my college football life, actually came in a loss for Memphis State. It was in the 2019 Cotton Bowl. Memphis got to that Cotton Bowl. I didn't expect to win. I'm going to be very honest with you. I told my wife now at the time, and now she's my girlfriend then, but I told her when we went down there, I said, look, baby, there's no way in hell Memphis is going to win this football game. I said, but I am just so dadgum happy and so dadgum happy and proud to be at that Cotton Bowl and watching Memphis win the AutoZone Liberty Bowl on Friday afternoon. That meant more to me than any national championship that Kentucky's won in basketball. That 2008 national championship run that Memphis went on. I was a kid, man. I was 12 years old, had my heart ripped out of me in 2008. Absolutely.
So we all did.
Oh, my God. But that Cotton Bowl game, Rob, and to me, college football means everything means a lot of different things to a lot of people. And I've said this on this show so many times. But college football to me is about the memories. I mean, I just lost my grandfather not only a month ago. And I can remember going to Memphis State games with him when he had season tickets at University of Memphis. I call it Memphis State, at Memphis State.
Yeah.
And sitting in the rain and the sleet, watching Memphis lose to Marshall, Southern Miss, and UAB.
Yep.
Not just getting beat. They got their ass kicked. I mean, they were losing by 60 points to Marshall before Marshall was good. So those are my memories of college football. I know what it means to you. I know you want to win every game. And at Auburn, I think that is a reasonable expectation. But for the rest of us, man, if Memphis got to go to another New Year's Six Bowl, I don't care where it is, I'm going. I've already, if Kentucky were to ever get to a Peach Bowl or something, I would go. So it means something different to everybody.
Well, I like Maury Gaston's comments having breakfast this morning at the Hotel Roanoke in Roanoke, Virginia, one of my favorite places. And Doug Dean is with us right now, the AU Dose. But I know Maury is at the Hotel Roanoke because my mother went to Hollins College up there. My two sisters did. And my sister Susan and Rick, they all live in Roanoke. And my nephew practices law up there. So Maury says, I believe every player who quits, quote, opts out, should be permanently blackballed from the Letterman's Club, tickets, and all university events forever. I agree, because I'm going to tell you something. You can't do that anywhere else in the world. Try doing that in the business world. Look, to me, no, I agree with you. I think Freeze is going to be very successful at Auburn, but I just can't tolerate it. I've got 4 kids of my own. I would absolutely go ballistic if I saw a lack of effort. That's just what I saw in the bowl game. It was frustrating, but I look at the big picture. Hugh Freeze is trying to close that talent gap. Mitch, if you can hang on, Doug Dean, jump in here with us. Are you still up in North Carolina? I know you were up there at the old Edwards Inn or whatever it was, or was it? Remember the pub on the side of the road in the day, Doug? Ye Old Inn.
Yeah. Back in the saddle, back in the ham, Birmingham. Ain't no ham like Birmingham. Happy New Year,
That's
guys.
Right. Hey, Happy
Rob,
New Year to you.
Are you taking a break real quick?
Yeah, we're going to take a break. Mitch, hang on, Mitch, for a second, because Mitch knows Coach Freeze really well, and we've been having some good – I'm not attacking Freeze. I just frustrated about that loss as a fan, but it'd be that way of any school. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with Doug Dean and Mitch Davis, Sidelines. Happy New Year, or as they say in trading places, Merry New Year to you. Be right back.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Yeah, curve everything else. Win, 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 win. These ops ain't lit. Mommy. Win, 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 win.
All right, Mitch, I know you've got to get to work here in just a second, but, I think it's a great discussion. It's more like you just always, when you see those blue jerseys, if you're an Auburn man or woman, you just expect 110% because that's what you've always seen. So it can get frustrating. But Doug, it's college football. This is what makes it so much fun. Look how fired up people are. The morning after the national championship game. As much as we love college basketball, when that thing's over Monday, it's tough because it's over. There's no argument. There's a lot of argument about college football year round, Doug.
There is. And, Happy New Year to you and Mitch both. Hope you can stick around a couple of minutes, Mitch. I'd love your reaction to the big picture I want to comment on. This time a year from now, guys, we will be about more than halfway through an 11 game playoffs. The first 4 games will be December 2021. And I think the top 4 teams, which will be conference champions, if memory serves, they get a bye. I believe all 4 get a bye.
Yeah, top
the
4
quarterfinals will be New Year's Eve and January 1. 2 semis will be January 9 and 10, and then the championship game under this 12-team format will be January 20th, just ahead of the Super Bowl. So I think that in terms of timing and fans getting the holidays behind them, having an opportunity to go see your team if they're having a great year, you've got until January 9 or 10 and then the 20th to plan on that. So I think it's going to be really exciting. I'm going to not waste a lot of your viewers' time, Rob, talking about that abomination of an Auburn, quote, performance in the Music City Bowl. But, our own head coach did not skirt the issue. They were not prepared. The game plan offensively sucked, probably defensively until the second half. I was proud of how they started responding. Some of those young kids showed promise. But Hugh said, once again, he focused on recruiting. So that's 2 games that our own head coach has said he just didn't value the game, frankly. Or if you want to be fairer than maybe I am, he trusted his offensive coordinator, Philip Montgomery, to put a plan together. And with that in mind, Rob, Montgomery is on the clock, and I don't think it's going to run more than a week or two that Philip Montgomery has shown the door. Your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah. I agree with you. And Mitch, I know you want to comment because you got to get back and make some loans.
Yeah, so really, truthfully, I think that is the case, and this is just, again, I have to be very careful because I've got a personal aspect of this. Look at what Nick Saban basically did at Alabama for the college football playoff. He did the exact same thing. He let Tommy Rees kind of do the offensive game plan. He let his defensive coordinator do his job. Nick Saban, if you guys notice, Nick Saban was out recruiting a lot harder the last 2 or 3 weeks than he ever has in the last 4 or 5 years. He didn't send his assistants out. He was out there, making those recruits because some of these guys are feeling pressure from the guys who are hitting the transfer portal very hard. Ole Miss has put every chip in the bucket, and they said, "Hey, we're gonna go compete for a national championship next year." Look at the talent they brought in. Jackson Dart is back. Quishon Junkins is 50-50. Whether or not he's going to return depends if he's a top 2 or 3 round draft pick.
He's only a second-year player.
Yeah, he's going to be. He's only a second-year player, but he can still go to the NFL draft because he's got.
No,
I thought he.
No, you got to play 3 years. He's got to come back. Unfortunately for Ole Miss's opponents.
So Quishon Junkins is back, Dart's back, and then you got Prickerson's back, the tight end wide receiver hybrid there. Ole Miss is going to be a damn good football team next year. Pete Golding has got a great defense. Thinking about Hugh Freeze and Nick Saban, what they did, and they made a mistake, and they owned up to it. They said, "Hey, this is what I did," without throwing their coaches underneath the bus. They said, "Hey, I Mr. Dean, you said he basically was like, look, I trusted my coordinators. I trusted my assistants to kind of do the job. Just like if we were in a normal job, like my boss gives me a task. My boss does not look over my shoulder and says, "Hey, Mitch, are you completing the task? Are you completing this project?" No, my boss comes back, 2-3 weeks later and goes, "Hey, where's that project? How's that project looking?" And if I didn't do a good job on my project, then I'm going to have a one-on-one with my boss and probably his boss. So that's why I think these offense coordinators, I don't think Tommy Rees is going to have a job next fall at Alabama, and I really don't think Philip Montgomery, if Philip Montgomery still has a job and Tommy Rees still has a job, it is going to be a very tight rope. It is going to be on that thin ice. Coach Freeze is going to win at Auburn. You got to give it time. You got to give it a little bit. He owned up to his mistake. Like I said, these guys are feeling, truthfully, I'm in a lot of these press conferences and practices and around, the coaches have them on the podcast. These guys are feeling pressure from Lane Kiffin. They just are. Lane Kiffin is getting money from, I don't know where he's getting this money from, and I have not been able to track down the paper source of this. I've heard things, but Ole Miss is out recruiting. They are putting all their chips into this 2024 season. If Ole Miss were to win a national championship and get to the college football, not only playoffs, but semifinals and the national championship game, it is going to be next season. It is, because sooner or later, Nick Saban's going to retire. Lane Kiffin's going to be mentioned for that Alabama job. If he were to turn down Alabama, he is going all in with Ole Miss. I'll leave it at that. And these guys are feeling the pressure from Lane Kiffin right now. I mean, just to be honest with y'all.
Absolutely. Hey, sign off whenever you need to, but I'm glad you mentioned Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, because we've talked a little on the previous shows that if you study Ole Miss's schedule, you always have to say on paper, because there'll be a couple of teams that end up being more dangerous to play than they look like on the schedule. But Kiffin does not have to play his nemesis Saban regular season, and he gets Georgia in Oxford, and you can drop that Georgia game in a close one, and if you take care of business the other games, maybe even lose 2. If he goes to Atlanta and wins, he's absolutely in the college football playoff. So it's now or never for Kiffin. I do think the way he's building it, it gets trickier sustaining success when you're relying that heavily on the portal, because you're at the mercy of either spending a lot of NIL money every year, which maybe they can raise, or you've got a situation where kids just don't go in the portal, or they're not considering Oxford as a destination.
Yeah. Mitch, I know you got to sign off, but let people know how they can follow you. Great commentary as always.
Guys, I really appreciate it, Doug. Good to see you. And Rob, always good to see you. Happy New Year to y'all. Follow me on Twitter, MitchDavis_8, Instagram, Facebook, The Mitch Davis Show, and also TheMitchDavisShow.com. Going to have a podcast one-on-one interview with Kyle Ferry, the kicker at Mississippi State. Looking forward to talking about his journey, how he got to Starkville, Mississippi from Arkansas and being, a big Mississippi State fan over there in near Conway, Arkansas. And then also having my guy Blake Lovell come on later in the week. Rob, hopefully gets you on. Hopefully we can get the scheduling worked out. Yep. Blake Lovell is going to be joining me to talk SEC basketball as SEC basketball season opens up on Saturday for the men, and then women's opens up on Thursday and Sunday. I will be in Oxford, so Ole Miss women's basketball fans, if you're there at the LSU game on Sunday, I will be there to make sure you say hello. I'd love to meet you and love to talk with you. Rob, good to talk with you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, look, love it. We'll talk to you in a couple of days. Have a great new year. All right,
hey, Mitch.
Doug, this is something too to think about. Coaches now must deal with the early signing period. That's a new one. It's 3 or 4 years of that now. You've got the early portal window. You got to deal with guys coming in your office and wearing you out about that. You got to deal with bowl game preparation. Oh, and add NIL to that because guys are also shopping. So you got 4 things. There's no longer the coach like, we're going to get ready for the bowl game. I mean, I actually believe what Freeze said. I listened to the Auburn, network. I couldn't go to the game. I had to be at a funeral Saturday in Memphis. And I listened to Andy Burcham, and he asked Hugh Freeze coming off the field, about the game. He goes, I hate to say it. I just didn't have them prepared. But look, I understand the big picture of recruiting, but your takeaway on all they're dealing with, not feeling sorry for them, but we need to change some things because you saw Ole Miss. My son, he won a big parlay Saturday, and he just said, Dad, I need one more. He goes, I need Ole Miss, Penn State. I said, Ole Miss wants to be there. Penn State doesn't. Think about it. Ole Miss kicks their butt, and they did.
Yeah, there's a difference, my friends. There's a difference between excuses, which none of us want to make a habit of when your team wins, and difference between excuses and valid reasons. Yeah. And Kirby Smart himself, which I really appreciated, and I thought it was gracious in just blowout victory, 63-3. It wasn't. I thought it was gracious of Kirby to sort of run to the defense of Florida State, that they were caught in a whirlwind, a perfect storm of events, from being left out of the 4-team playoff, and the wake of last night, and in the context of Georgia's performance against Florida State. I don't think there are really, other than logical, based on the protocols of the selection committee, I don't think there's a huge argument that Florida State was enormously wrong. What was wrong, the reason they were wrong is that it was going to happen to someone. There were only 4, should have been 16. But Kirby I think he was saying, we've got to decide what we want out of college football. Do we want all the bowls that are not part of the 12-team playoff to be meaningless to the point that it's routine? You have 10 to 20, 30 players opt out of even playing, so that, we had, was it Florida State? I think they had under 35 or 40 players total roster to go to war with against a really good Georgia team. And Georgia, frankly, looked to me like they should have been one of the 4 teams. Yeah. But I don't really fault the committee for how that played out. All the problems would have been solved if they just had 6 teams. And, the Rome was not built in a day, and we've got a better, not a perfect, but a better format coming next year. My only beef with the new format is, if I understand it, it allows for a conference champion to have 2, 3, 4 losses, and just because they're on paper conference champion, as that's defined, playing in that game and winning it, then we're going to have a team that arguably does not deserve selection, but that automatic berth will get them in. And you see the same thing happen in basketball when a team gets hot and wins their basketball conference tournament.
Well, you're right about basketball, but in football, Bill Hancock has said on this show several times, and we're going to try to get him on. Hopefully, maybe we can get him on this week. But the 6 highest ranked conference champions, and then 6 at-large teams. And you're right. If they're the highest ranked conference championship teams, I doubt there'll be one of them with 3 or 4 losses, but you could see an SEC team with 2 or 3 losses being an at-large or any conference that's perceived to be elite or really strong. I think Florida State, I'm glad Kirby Smart said what he said. I'm a huge Mike Norvell fan, and I've always liked Florida State. I've followed them since 1976 when they hired Bobby Bowden, when I went over there for spring break with my dad in March of 76, and he had to meet with the athletic director on a project, and they talked about their vision, and it came true. But 31 guys quit on that team. And I'm telling you, I listened to the Auburn postgame on the network, listening to Ronnie Browne and Jason Campbell, and they are pissed off. They have had it. Ronnie Browne, if you don't love Ronnie Browne, he wasn't like Ben Troop always talks. Great football player. We know that number 2 pick in the NFL draft. Hell of a baseball player, too. Ronnie's from Cartersville, Georgia. And Ronnie said, we got to decide. I mean, you just bringing guys into Auburn or any school just to get something, NIL, do they really want to be there? This isn't what we grew up with is Auburn football. And again, transfer that to any school. It's unacceptable. I'm glad Kirby Smart said what he said. It didn't trash Florida State. We hate Florida State. That's not it. But damn it, you had 31 guys quit on your team. That's shameful, and they damaged the brand. And so Florida State went out there with a bad attitude, and Georgia went out there with something to prove. We should have been in the playoff, and look what happened. I think a lot of stuff has happened in the last few days with these bowl games, these embarrassing losses. It's waking people up to what we've been saying is, you got to tell these guys with NIL, you play every damn game. If you don't get your money, or you quit on this team, you don't get Letterman privileges. Because you know why? The fans have allowed this, not the fans, but the NCAA and some of these rules makers, but the fans have had enough. Again, what do you think it costs for an Auburn fan to go from Mobile to Nashville for 3 or 4 nights to buy tickets and eat out and go out on Broadway to the restaurants and bars? It ain't cheap. So if the football team doesn't give a damn, you better hope the fans don't get apathetic, because then you're going to have 25,000 people at a 90,000 seat stadium. That's when this will really hit these players. They better think about what they're doing. I mean, look at Deion Sanders. How many 4 or 5 of his coaches have already left after year 1? Can anyone name a player on the Colorado team other than Travis Hunter and Deion's 2 sons?
Yeah, and a great take. Hugh Freeze is smart. If I'm wrong about that, then he's got about 2.5, 3 years left as the Auburn head football coach. I think the Auburn fans are ecstatic about how year 1 and especially the second year, the full cycle recruiting has gone. It's just mind-blowing to be 7th ranked class. But that goodwill capital gets burned up in a New York minute if he doesn't understand that the DNA and the heritage and Auburn's a flawed football program. I've always said our problem is standard deviation. It's way too wide a standard. We can have an undefeated national championship season and a year or 2 later go 3-9. So if he wants to sustain success, Auburn fans are looking for the Pat Dye mentality that if there is a game being played and if you're putting that blue or Stormtrooper white jersey on, it's automatically an important game. And I would think the New Mexico State game week and the poor preparation by his coordinators, especially Montgomery, Hugh would have learned that he had to consider being way more involved. And I just have trouble believing that you can't make a few phone calls to recruits, do a few visits, and still be hands-on, even if it means a 12-hour workday. Hugh has got to be more focused about body of work, proof of concept in 2024, and making sure that the offensive game plan and what we're going to do defensively gives you a chance to win, and you at least avoid just embarrassing losses like we've had 2 or 3 of this year.
Yeah. Doug, Kerry Jones up in Lebanon, Tennessee. I believe Montgomery will be gone. Ken Austin will be promoted to offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, but Hugh Freeze will call plays and take over the offense moving forward. That being said, I've heard that Ken Austin, I mean, he's an analyst. I've been following Kent since he was in high school. I watched him play his Brentwood Academy team with his tight end, Jimmy Hockaday, came down in 1981 to Memphis and beat a really good MUS team 38-7, Brentwood Academy. And he's an offensive coordinator. He's been in the CFL. He's been at Ole Miss. He's been with Freeze a long time. And that maybe Auburn said, well, you're not going to be offensive coordinator. You were just at Liberty. We need somebody big time. Well, when you put Ken Austin on that field, working with the quarterbacks, and Hugh Freeze calling plays, now you're going to start seeing the real Hugh Freeze vision of what Auburn football, I believe, will be. I don't have anything against Freeze. I just don't like losing. I'm never okay with it. But mainly, Doug, it's the lack of effort. If you know what I'm saying? When I had a coach tell me recently, I hate the word potential, because you know what that really means? You're sitting on talent and you're not using it. And I don't understand why. God gave it to you. Use it.
Yeah, well, I think Corey J is absolutely dead on. I think a few weeks ago there was a chance that Freeze was considering retaining Montgomery, that as long as Monty was agreeable, that they would both jointly put together the play sheet for the game plan a given week, but that Hugh would be highly involved, suggesting or calling upwards of 60% of the plays in a game. And not every coordinator is willing to do that. And if they aren't, it can result in friction and it not working well. Now, I think in no small part because of that abomination of a Music City Bowl performance. And, well, let's be honest, it's kind of an exhibition game. It's not anything that matters a great deal other than protecting the brand of your football program, and they failed at that. But I think Montgomery's on a short leash now and is going to be replaced. We just won't hear about it until Hugh decides. Is it the Corey J model of relying on Ken Austin? They work together. I kind of like that, as opposed to bringing in a hired gun OC that Hugh is going to once again say, I've got to let him design and call the plays in a game. I think Freeze is more likely needs to hire somebody, and I think he's done that in Charles Kelly, who's going to join the staff, a very veteran defensive coordinator who's going to be co-DC with Ron Roberts. You may even see Roberts gone. I don't think so, but let Hugh have guys he can trust on the recruiting trail so that he can truly focus on game plans. And then I think you've got a formula that allows Auburn realistically with the schedule. I think a good goal is to see if you can get to make the ceiling 9 wins next year. That's asking a lot. And we haven't solved the quarterback problem we saw on the 30th. But if you can get to 9 wins and look good and be competitive in every game, that's a big second step. And then we are on course to have a phenomenal 2025 signing class. So I like the direction of things. Before I run out of time, Rob, I did have for my Bama friends, a very positive take on last night's game, if there's time to offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, first of all, I've said it several times, trying to be fair and objective, that what I saw this season as it developed week to week was shaping up to be Nick Saban's best coaching job in his time at Alabama. And even in that tough loss, which there were 4 or 5 plays that either team could have won that one, and more of them went Michigan's way, I still say winning the SEC championship against a very good Georgia team, finding a way to only have 1 regular season loss to Texas, undefeated in SEC play, I think it's still there is a case for it being Saban's best coaching job. And we should all be careful to undervalue winning an SEC championship. Now, last night, the Alabama, wow, big time players make big time plays, and that sky punt, which was similar to Coy Moore muffing in the Iron Bowl, that player, idiotic lack of situational awareness, fields the ball at the 5, fields the punt at the 5, drops it. It bounces off his arm to the 1. He alertly grabs the ball and just barely gets back forward progress to the 1-yard line before he was destroyed, and could have fumbled the ball there, which would have ended the game with an Alabama touchdown. It could have ended with 22-20 and Alabama safety wins the game. So that's how narrow these margins are. And to me, it just came down to Michigan had more veteran players that had played together in the trenches. Michigan probably had what you might call a complete quarterback. Alabama is not in that playoff without Jalen Milroe, but Alabama's also exposed a little bit in some critical decisions and plays by the fact that Milroe's still on the learning curve. But I congratulate Alabama on a phenomenal season. I know their fans won't feel that way because they're wired to win championships, but I just think it's still one of Saban's best coaching jobs in his entire tenure at Alabama. You're muted, Rob. I think you're muted.
I won't be surprised if Nick Saban doesn't look back on this as his favorite team because of what they went through. And it's funny to hear people say, it's the worst roster. Yeah. I mean, you're talking again, that doesn't, you have to really understand Alabama football to know what they mean, but where they were in the quarterback, the hurdles they had to overcome, and then the progress they made on the offensive line. But if you look on that 4th and 3, J.C. Latham's a big guy. I remember talking to him at SEC Media Days. He's 8'3", 420 pounds. Now, he's a big guy, about 6'6", 330, 340. He just got blown backwards by a Michigan defender who fired that gap. And 4th and 31, albeit if not for, Auburn playing patty cake and rushing 2, I mean, maybe Alabama doesn't even get there then, but they still won the damn SEC. They beat the number 1 team. So I understand Rodney Orr is going to be on with us in the next hour, Tider Insider. That's a tough one, man. Because it's also going to be fun to watch. We hadn't even talked about this. I hate that McGriff might be going to A&M. I hate that. I mean, that's you get a good one like Charles Kelly coming in, who's an elite recruiter and a great position coach. I don't know how good a coordinator he is, but you can't say what happened at Colorado this year was on him.
No, watching the tea leaves, I think there's still a chance, but it needs to happen really quickly that before contracts are signed with McGriff at A&M. But if Hugh Freeze makes the decision that Ron Roberts is not the future and Charles Kelly is, then I think that would open the door for McGriff to accomplish what he wanted, which is to get back to on-the-field coaching. This czar of accountability job, it was valuable. It was producing good results internally, but that's not what any real coach wants to do. Do want a footnote on, because people are obsessing about, is Peyton Thorne really the answer next year? I don't think he's the answer in terms of winning 10-plus games. I think but he should be better if you just improve the supporting cast. But Auburn made a late run after elite Washington State QB Cam Ward, who had narrowed his decisions to Miami and a couple others. Auburn got in the mix for that with close to 7-figure NIL, reportedly, Rob. But in the end, Ward is decided, which is probably smart, he's entering the NFL draft. He's got the numbers that somebody's going to salivate over that and probably get him first round.
Yeah. Well, it'll be fun, but like again, in talking to some people that really know Auburn, you can't win with thump group of 5 offensive linemen from Western Kentucky and East Carolina and all. Sorry, you got to develop them, and there's maybe 20 or 25 really good ones for the 16 SEC schools that they'll bring in. The rest of them you've got to develop. So that's. But great takes, Doug. As always, I think the big picture, if I'm recommending, let's say Hugh Freeze is a stock, I'll say, look, you're getting a really, really cheap, discounted value stock that pays a 5% dividend. Hugh Freeze will win. The question is, can he get the offensive lineman to go? Because no matter how good a quarterback Auburn has, if you don't have that line of scrimmage, like Georgia with the big red wall, and Jordan Hill is in the box about to come in with us, and Jordan will bring you in. Doug Dean, AU Dose, Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, one of the best in the business. Both of y'all are. The emphasis Georgia places on the line of scrimmage, God, I mean, it's fun to watch. But Doug, close out, because but you're right on everything you said about the big picture.
Yeah, and Jordan, good to see you, my friend. Happy. And I'll close since we got a Georgia analyst on. Anyone who's the eye test, notwithstanding that Florida State was playing with about 50% of their arsenal, as Kirby Smart said very graciously post game. Anyone who doesn't look at how these games played out and say that just unfortunately because of how the committee process and protocol works, arguably the most potent, complete team in college football, the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm not thrilled having to say that, but the truth matters. Should have been playing in a playoff to be considered, once they get Bauer, and I assume Bauer would not have opted out if they were playing for all the marbles. So to me, the best team I've seen play late season was Georgia, and they played just like Alabama had to play without their two best wide receivers a couple of years ago, and they didn't have enough to beat Georgia in the championship game. So too, Georgia played Alabama without Bauer at full speed. So that's just what we've got. And the good news is this should be the last time we have true, what you might call a travesty in terms of the teams that are deserving or best, not one, but both of those criteria, deserving and best, will get in the 12-team playoff with rare exceptions. And if you're the 13th team whining about that, you're not going to garner much sympathy. Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things with Georgia. They lost at the wrong point in the year, I mean, they just picked a bad time to lose, and I kind of wrote about this that Sunday after SEC title game. Any other year they would have been okay, but it's just such a deep playoff field, and it was a shame for that Orange Bowl to have played out the way it did. Had everybody played, and I understand fully why a lot of those guys did not play, guys who got NFL futures, guys who transferred out or went into the portal. But on paper, that should have been probably the marquee bowl game outside of the playoff. And, Kirby talked about it after the game, made a point to say, people need to see what happened here tonight. Things need to change. And, he didn't offer any suggestions or give his thoughts on what that should be. But I hope for the sake of bowl season, they come up with something, whether it's, being able to pay the players who play in the game specifically, or I'm not sure what exactly you could do to tie that in. But I got a trip out of Miami for it, and that's about the highlight as far as the football went.
Well, listen, if you look at Saban is not 50 years old anymore, and he certainly looks healthy enough. He can coach 5 or 10 more years if he wants to. I have no idea when he's walking away. But Kirby, how old is Kirby, Jordan? Do you know?
Kirby, I think, is like 47, 48. I'd have to look.
That's it.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of runway. If he's enjoying himself, and he's got a lot of runway left. So Georgia is strategically positioned as well or better than arguably than anybody in the SEC. But I think if you talk to most any Alabama fan, they are hopeful that the succession can be smooth, but they're concerned that there's just not a can't miss guy out there. I don't care if you hire Dan Lanning or anybody else. You're not getting Kirby Smart to leave Georgia. Can people stop saying Alabama's trying to get Smart to? You don't leave your alma mater when they can do anything they want competitively there. But I'm really excited about where we're headed. The SEC only gets harder to win 10-plus games. I don't care who you are when you had Texas and Oklahoma. And then teams like Tennessee, LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss. Can't leave Ole Miss out now the way Kiffin is recruiting in the portal and the way they looked in their bowl game. But you're going to play 5 or 6 really toss-up games, I would argue, in the SEC. I don't care who you are.
Yeah,
definitely. And I mean, to your point, I mean, who has had a better start of the offseason than Ole Miss? You get Jackson Dart back. I mean, they've very clearly gotten the most talent out of the portal. Georgia's got to go to Oxford next year.
Yeah.
And I tell you one thing, they've had a lot of guys declare in the last few days. Having Carson Beck back is huge, because if they were breaking in a new starting quarterback next year, I mean, you're talking about probably, potentially like an 8 or 9 win season, because it's a tough schedule for Georgia. So having their starting quarterback back is certainly going to help playing teams like Ole Miss.
Yeah, and the SEC scheduling czars and made it almost a certainty that there's not going to be an undefeated SEC team next year because they got Georgia and Alabama head-to-head regular season. And I don't want to be snarky, but some of us who have had to play both of those cats for decades are saying about time for Georgia and Alabama to not be able to dodge each other regular season.
Yeah, that's one of those series I'm glad. I hope they play regularly. I will say Georgia fans got kind of a bit of some grief with that game being in Tuscaloosa because Alabama hasn't played in Sanford Stadium since 2015. The last time I should say these two teams played in the regular season was in Tuscaloosa. Now, granted, pretty sure that was 2020, the COVID year, so it's not like fans could really show up like normal, but. Yeah, Georgia fans aren't exactly thrilled that game is going to be played in Bryant-Denny.
Yeah.
Rob, I'm going to get out of here. Jordan, Happy New Year to you guys.
Hey, thanks so much, Doug. We'll talk to you this week. All right, Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports Georgia. Check him out on his podcast and all. We'll talk about that right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here again with Jordan Hill. And Jordan, we're talking about Georgia, and you're right. Carson Beck announcing he's coming back. A lot of other guys probably won't enter the portal because he is coming back. But, as much talent as Georgia has, even the Dogs down the stretch had to deal with injuries. That's why when people say, how much talent do you need? You sign every good player you can, don't you?
Definitely. I mean, think about, we talked about that SEC title game. Just look at pass catchers. Brock Bowers, not 100%. Lab McConkey, not 100%. Ra Thomas doesn't even play against Alabama. And wide receiver, I thought, was about as deep as it's ever been for Georgia. So it's one of those things where you can go into a year like, let's go ahead and look to next year for Georgia at running back. They bring in Trevor Etienne from Florida. Branson Robinson will be coming back. He's coming off an injury. Andrew Paul is back. They've got Roderick Robinson, who was a true freshman this year. They signed 3 high school running backs. So think about it right now. We're like, oh my God, that's a ton of running backs on this roster. Well, let's remember this conversation when we're in like September.
Yeah.
And, you probably have someone banged up, very well could see somebody decide to go in the portal between now and then. It's one of those things. There's always safety in numbers. And I think that, Georgia learned that a bit the hard way. I look at the defensive line, even going back to the lead up to this season. Kirby talked about how thin he felt like they were on the defensive line, and I think that kind of hurt Georgia. They didn't have some of the rotations that they had in the past. And, we were talking about this during that Rose Bowl game, watching Alabama, and the fact that, Michigan just harassed Jalen Milroe for so much of that game. Georgia just could not do that consistently. I do think they wound up sacking him like 4 times, but I'm pretty sure Michigan sacked Jalen like 5 times in the first half. So it's one of those things where, Georgia, I think there are some lessons learned in how this year played out. And it's going to be fascinating just to see what Georgia goes and does in the transfer portal and just getting ready for spring ball.
Well, you look at 5 sacks. Michigan's defense is aggressive. They're disciplined. They're sound. They cover. They are like so in sync watching them play, but they're cat quick, and they're just tough as nails. And their running back, the 5'8" running back, wow, he is really good. JJ McCarthy. Their offense kept Alabama just on their heels all day long. They just, some of that touchdown they took to tie the game, the guy running underneath. I mean, just brilliant play calling, and they're really good, and so is Washington. But you know, you're right. I remember 3 years ago in the preseason, I guess in the 21 preseason, Georgia had 13 running backs on the roster. And still, you're right. At the end of the season, you're trying to find, you know, healthy bodies out there to play. I like this comment by Kelly Leak. No doubt the committee did a great job of putting together games to entertain viewers, not necessarily by formula. In the perfect world, Georgia makes that playoff. It's Georgia, Bama, let's say Texas and Michigan. Georgia goes from 1 to 6. Bama beats 1 and goes from 8 to 4. So logically, you think Georgia maybe falls to 4. But how would Georgia, based on what you've seen, what matchups would have given them the most difficulty?
I think it kind of goes to that Alabama game where it just would have been if Georgia could have pressured the opposing quarterback. I just think that the defensive line and that pass rush just was lacking. It just felt like we kept waiting for it to turn a corner, kind of saw it at times. I remember, you know, in November, Kirby Smart was saying, hey, Michael Williams, you know, our defensive end, former 5-star from Hardaway High School down there in Columbus, Georgia. You know, he was saying he's playing his best ball. And, you know, all due respect to Michael, it just didn't really turn into a lot as far as production these last few games. I mean, the Alabama game, you know, I had people messaging me like, is he playing hurt? You know, and like, what is going on? And just, you know, outside of like Jalen Walker, who is an inside linebacker that they've kind of unleashed as a, you know, off the ball pass rusher, they just could not generate the pass rush. And I think that, you know, think about a matchup with like Washington, if they'd have played Michael Penix. You know, I haven't watched a ton of Washington, I'll admit, you know, before last night, but I was kind of familiar with him. Remember him in Indiana. I knew he had a big season. I mean, it just looked like watching a video game, the way he was putting the ball exactly where it had to be and just how precise his deep throws were. You know, it would have been really hard for Georgia to affect him because they just really struggled at getting after guys in the pocket. It led to some issues. You know, I think about going back to week 3 when they played South Carolina, that first half, Spencer Rattler was nearly perfect. I think he did have a few incompletions, but I mean, and it's because he had all kinds of time. So, you know, I get Georgia fans who are frustrated. I saw people over on the junkyard saying, we blew it. You know, if we would have just beaten Alabama, we would have won the national title. And Georgia would have had a shot, but I'm by no means sitting here thinking, oh, they would have walked to a win because they just were very, very inconsistent in rushing the passer. And if you look at one thing with the teams that were in the playoff, it's that they had some pretty good quarterbacks who could carve you up if you gave them time to do it.
Yeah. I mean, watching Washington, you know, I thought Texas, the difference would be their defensive line because Bo Davis does such a great job. And they've got some really good linemen. They got some depth. But I kept looking at this statistic, and these stats don't lie. The Huskies have 13 fifth-year seniors and 13 sixth-year seniors. That is so important. I mean, you either have it or you don't. They've got depth on the line of scrimmage, and they're big, they're fast. And watching Michael Penix, you know, he's from Tampa, signed with Indiana. Hell of a quarterback. Came back for a 6th year. And this guy wants it. That is a close-knit team. Another thing about Washington, 8 of their last 9 wins, or maybe 9 of their last 10 wins, they went undefeated, were by single digits. When you win those close games, Jordan, it makes you a closer team, and in my opinion, a better team, because that means you're listening and you're hanging on and listening to every word the coaches are saying about finish the game, play the full 60. And that's what the Huskies do.
Yeah, I hate to rub it in for any Tennessee fans watching. I believe at one point Michael Penix was a Tennessee commit. And if I'm remembering the timeline, I think that he committed while Butch Jones was still there. And then they fired Butch and they're bringing in Jeremy Pruitt. And then he kind of reopens his recruitment, goes to Indiana. So that's a tough one because Michael Penix is a heck of a quarterback. And yeah, I mean, I think the thing, looking ahead to next week when you talk about the national title game, for me, it's going to be how Michigan's defensive backs handle Washington's receivers, because as good as Michael Penix is, he's got one of the deepest receiving cores I've seen and just so consistent. I mean, one of the touchdown passes he threw against Texas gets tipped. I think it might have been Polk who reeled it in and called it for the touchdown. I mean, they are just sure-handed. And, Michigan's a favorite, and I do think Michigan's going to win. But they are going to have their hands full trying to stop that passing game because they are very, very effective. And if Michael Penix throws it anywhere near those receivers, odds are they're probably going to bring it in.
Yeah. It's just, college football, there's a lot of people out there that they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, some bad news. I think what we saw yesterday, I hate that the SEC, from my perspective, doesn't have a team in the national championship. Obviously, my alma mater, Auburn, they missed the trip to Nashville. Some of them made it, I think. But just having folks like you on here who are just great at what you do, but you're a journalist, man. You're not a Kool-Aid drinker. And I can ask you about any school, and you know what you're talking about. Every guest we have on Sidelines is effectively a Swiss Army knife, so you can cover a lot of things, but you're objective. And I tell you, Kalen DeBoer in Washington, Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, I'm watching that. I mean, a lot of people saying it's not worth watching. Man, I will be glued to the TV. And, I mean, what's great? Doug Dean mentioned next year the college playoff will go to like January 21st or 24th or whatever like that. So then we got the Super Bowl right after that. Then we'll have the Senior Bowl. And then we'll have maybe a week or so be spring practice. Somebody in the South will start spring practice. So we won't go long without football. And you know the drill, all the way through late April. Then in May, the football magazines come out. It's time to sit there at the beach and look out there on the Gulf or on the Atlantic if you're over at Hilton Head or St. Simon's, reading those magazines. But do you notice how personal college football is, Jordan? I mean, if somebody says they hate Georgia or Auburn or Alabama or Tennessee or Memphis, whatever, it's like someone saying your kids are ugly or your wife's ugly. I mean, that's why college football will thrive. And I am as confident as ever. I know there are a lot of cynics out there that say NIL, the portal. I'm telling you to watch the free market. Did you hear some of the comments by former players of you picked the school about this lack of effort in the bowl games and whatever? Lane Duggar down in Auburn. Why do you feel the Auburn effort was so inconsistent this year? Well, I think it wasn't so much inconsistent as they didn't have the talent. It's the worst roster in 40 plus years. But, can you imagine Herschel Walker, Buck Bellew, Jimmy Meat Cleaver Weaver, Amp Arnold, Lindsey Scott going in there and trying to tell him you're not going to play in a bowl game or something like that? I think there's going to be tremendous pressure from the old guard on these young guys, and that's going to trickle down to these kids going, you know what, I'm going to stay. So here's a question. Someone asked this, how do you stop? Okay, look at this. Opt-outers need to be penalized. The best is monetarily. Should bowls withhold what they pay out to the respective schools based on the number of the players that show up for the bowl game? I mean, would you be for that?
No, I don't know that would be effective. I think what you got to do is incentivize it. I think you got to kind of do the 180 of it and give, money for them to show up. Look, I'll be the first to tell you that was not a good product in the Orange Bowl. Full disclosure, Rob, I had all my stuff written at halftime. Just had to update the final score, a couple stats because it was over. And I would have very much liked to have had a reason to keep watching that, into the fourth quarter and actually
Yeah.
write something kind of compelling. But when you look at all these decisions, I get it. You got guys that are getting ready to go to the NFL. What are the stakes in this Orange Bowl other than pride and trying to get another win? These guys have to look out for themselves, and I understand that. But in a day and age with NIL, I don't think there's any excuse for the bowls not to work with the schools when it comes to giving a financial incentive to play in that game. And just think about how much better that game would have been if Florida State had a Keon Coleman, had Jared Verse, had some of their best players. If you look at the numbers, that game, I can't remember. I mean, it was millions upon millions who watched that Orange Bowl with it being a 60-point game. Just think about what that game could have been if you kind of put up financial incentive. So I understand people are frustrated and say, well, they should not be able to get their NIL, if they opt out. But I would go more so, let's give them the incentive. These bowls make a ton of money. Go look at whoever's running the bowl. They're making at least six figures. And they always give gifts, like $200, $300, whatever, in watches, things like that. They can afford to work with these schools. I think giving a financial incentive is going to be the most realistic way that you can get these bowls to have the talent on hand that was with those teams throughout the year.
Yeah. Listen, Jordan, I know you got a big day ahead of you. I didn't mean to keep you a couple of minutes long. You've got a lot going on. I love your honesty. Full disclosure, you're right. I'd written it by halftime. But look, a lot of things happening with Georgia. And then it never stops. And look forward to having you on next week, as always, and just look forward to another great year. You're absolutely one of the most valuable parts of Sidelines and everything we do, because you never show up. I always tell people this, you'd be a great trial lawyer because you never show up to court not ready. You never show up on the show and go, I don't know what to talk about. There's never enough time is the problem. But let people know about your great podcast. You constantly put stuff out on Twitter. It's great. You may not get a daily newspaper, but follow Jordan Hill and you'll be wiser for it.
Appreciate that. Dogs247.com on Twitter, at Jordan Davis Hill on Twitter, at Dogs247. I tell people listening that tonight at midnight, our 60% off sale ends at Dogs247.com. So if you're interested in Georgia, I would highly recommend you go over there. Our guy Ben Wolk's about to go to San Antonio for the All-American Bowl. So there's going to be a lot of content about some of the Georgia signees that are there. Junkyard Dogcast is the podcast we do. Probably going to be about once a week during the off season, barring some breaking news. And we'll have a new podcast, a live one at 12 p.m. Eastern time today. So like you said, Rob, a lot going on, but exciting time. Do want to make sure and wish you a happy new year, and hope everybody listening has gotten 2024 off to a good start.
Well, you helped us make it happen, man. Same to you. Happy New Year, Jordan. We'll see you next week. Take care. All right. A lot of questions coming in here. We got a few minutes here before we'll take a quick break and come back. But Rodney or Tyler Insider will be on with us again. Rodney covers Alabama, but you can ask him about any school. He will be objective. I think he's fantastic. He's been doing this. I think this is year number 27 for Tyler Insider. But love the comments from Jordan. Let's get some of these questions right now. Okay. Michigan did a great job of pressuring Milroe. Love their defensive line and linebackers. I just think Michigan, those guys love playing together. I haven't seen a team more passionate, more in tune with their coach's vision than I have when I watch Michigan. That's why they beat Alabama. I mean, Alabama had chances to win that game, but give Michigan credit. Michigan was the better team yesterday. Who knows, if they played 10 times, it might be 50-50. But they're a damn good football team, and they are in my respect. I know a lot of people don't like Jim Harbaugh, but again, every coach out there, every coaching staff in America does everything in their power to gain a competitive advantage over the opponent. And if you don't think so, you're not talking to enough people. It's a very competitive world. And again, coaches do everything in their power. Lane Duggar again, Auburn effort so inconsistent. They didn't have the players. I mean, Chuck Oliver, the king of college football in the South, and catch his show right after Sidelines Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, Southern Sports Today. Get the app. It's free. Put it on your phone. He said at the beginning of last year, he felt like the talent gap between Auburn and Alabama and Auburn and Georgia was the widest he'd seen it in 41 years. That was Pat Dye's first year. And Auburn had some players. They took a class that was ranked in February or whatever of 1980, those freshmen that came in like Greg Carr, Quincy Williams, and Lionel James. They all, 4 years later were SEC champions, but he mixed them with other better talented classes. But at Auburn, the problem is the lack of interior linemen. I'm talking to a coach last week. You're not going to win the SEC. You're not going to win the CFP with, guys from Group of 5 schools, Western Kentucky, Eastern Carolina, Missouri State, or whatever. Sorry. I mean, those guys are there and were recruited to the smaller schools. Sometimes you misevaluate. That happens. But you've got to go get the top level linemen every opportunity that you have. And then you got to develop them. I mean, you go back and you look at Hugh Nall left a lot of talented offensive linemen for Jeff Grimes and Auburn on that national championship team in 2010. 19 of the 24, count the kickers, 19 of the 24 starters when Auburn beat Oregon for the national championship in 2010 were Tommy Tuberville recruits. Hugh Nall, the last great offensive line coach Auburn's had, I guess. Jeff Grimes, he was really good. Hugh Nall's guys, tough as nails. Okay. You have to think about it. J.B. Grimes, pretty good. But it's the way Gus Malzahn and that staff starts at the top. They didn't recruit offensive linemen like they should have. And Auburn is still paying for it. And they're paying for it, and it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Say what you want about Peyton Thorne, but when you're running for your life on most every play, it's hard to be settled. Look at the difference. At the end of the Iron Bowl, 4th and 31, Milroe back in the pocket. He's standing there. He's going out. He's getting a snack. He's getting a Coke. He's back in the pocket, still looking, and he throws. Inexcusable. But those offensive linemen for Alabama, every one of them was a major blue chip recruit coming out of high school. You've got to invest. You got to look. You got to be forward thinking. You got to go get players. Kelly Leak, this guy's smart. Got to get him on the show. Inconsistency due to coaching, preparation, and player performance, all poor, and talent's not there. It's just not. It's not there right now. There's so many things to talk about. The players are already incentivized. Now you've got to pay them to participate in a bowl game. It's crazy. So I'll tell you what's going to happen. You just listen. Pay attention to what these former players, a lot of them are on the broadcast networks for You Pick the School in America. They've had it. The fans have had it. Okay? If you spoil your children rotten, spare the rod, spoil the child, you know what you'll get. Parents, anybody with gray matter between their ears knows what the hell I'm talking about. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. One of the best, Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, will be with us when we come back.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Curve everything else. Win, 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 win. These ops ain't lit. Mommy. Win, 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 win.
All right. Rodney or Tyler Insider joins us in just a minute. Say something about the Vitamin Shop, 5338 Goodman Road in South Haven, Mississippi. And they opened that location here just recently. Also, they're going to open another location in March in Oxford, Mississippi. Okay. So let me say something about some things going on that they have. And this is sent in from Justin Ross. Buy one, get one free weight management weeks 1 through 4. Week 1, a BOGO, free TVs, letters, and multis. That starts December 27th through 12/31. And then week 2, this is January 1st through January 7th. BOGO, buy one, get one free. TVs, herbs, and immune. Week 3, buy one, get one free. Cardiovascular includes diabetic, and that's 1/8 through 1/4. Week 4, buy one, get one free. Superfoods, probiotics. Look, 5338 Goodman Road in South Haven, Mississippi. This is the Vitamin Shop. They're open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sundays, they're open 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Give them a call, 662-932-4178. I'll say this about the Vitamin Shop. When you go into the stores, you have nutritionists, health specialists. They know what they are doing. Again, I shop there regularly. I love the place. They've got all kinds of probiotics. You can get vitamins, things that work with your intestines, with your gut. Also, shot blocks, goo, which are energy. I like them a lot. You can take these things while you're swimming, while you're biking, while you're running. Take them because you're working out. Don't just take them to take them. But they have really qualified people at the Vitamin Shop. Currently, 5338 Goodman Road in South Haven, Mississippi. And again, they're open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. No excuses, people. You know, the time to start a good habit is when you're talking about it at the end of the sentence. Don't wait till tomorrow. Start today at the Vitamin Shop. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. It's only $48 a year. Cost is only an issue in the absence of any added value. Also does a great TV show tonight, 6:30 p.m. He and Gary Harris, WVUA TV 23. They'll be on tonight. Rodney, another season has come and gone. Already looking ahead to next year, but let's get your takeaways. I just got something from my son Wilson over in Charlotte. Those are 2 of the best college football games I've watched all year. You don't like losing, but I can't remember the 2 CFP games being down to the wire like that back to back. That was incredible. I'm sure the TV ratings are off the charts.
Yeah, I thought I agree with you. I mean, I thought they were both great games. I thought, as far as Alabama's concerned, the Alabama Michigan. Rob, we said last week on your segment that Michigan's a really good football team. I know a lot of Alabama fans were kind of very confident, if you want to put it that way, of how this game would go. But I was really concerned about the experience that Michigan had. I was concerned about the fact that the last 2 years they've really been embarrassed as a program. Georgia humiliated them 2 years ago. I think the game against TCU was an embarrassment last year, especially the way Georgia pounded TCU in the championship game. And I felt like they had a lot of veteran players that felt like they had a lot to prove, and they're a really good team. And I thought, Rob, what happened in the last 4 minutes and 41 seconds of that game last night or yesterday summed up what I just said. Michigan's veteran players, their experienced players, their key players took the game over. They were down 20-13, 4:41 left, and they moved the ball right down the field. They scored, they tied it in regulation, and then they dominated the overtime. So I really think that otherwise, the first half, we saw what happened. Michigan, probably could have scored some more points. Alabama played well enough to keep it a close game. And then in the second half, I thought Alabama, outside of that last 4:41 in the game, they dominated the second half. They just couldn't close it out. That's because Michigan's veteran players, kind of stepped up.
Yeah, and they were really dialed in. I mean, both teams, there was a lot of talent out there, and as the game went on, Michigan had special teams problems, and at the end, you thought, okay, that guy's fumbling that ball. Alabama recovers. For a second, I thought that did happen, and it didn't. But wow, that was a full 60. And well, folks, we're talking with Rodney Orr, Tider Insider on the May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport Report. 2 locations open every day of the week. Remember, open on Sundays, 3 to 5 p.m. at Camp May Veterinary Clinic. That is a dog and cat daycare facility. They have an outdoor pool. They even have connecting cat condos, so all your cats can stay together when you are on the road, traveling or doing whatever you're doing. May Veterinary Clinic since 1964. Dr. Wayne May started it all. Dr. Waller May, Dr. Guy May, all of their fellow doctors and associates and the vet techs, everybody there. You won't find kinder people who love your dogs and cats and your animals more than the folks at May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport. Proud to have them as a sponsor of the Rodney Orr Tider Insider Report. Rodney, looking at the offensive line there throughout the game, what did Alabama do well and what did they not do well against that Michigan defense? Because that Michigan did things on offense for sure that I hadn't seen teams doing all year. They really keep you off balance. But let's talk about Alabama's front 5 on the offensive line.
Well, I think obviously the biggest thing was the snaps. I mean, the center just, for whatever reason, I don't know what Seth's issue is in terms of the centering, snapping the ball. It's been an issue all season long. I found Herb Street's comments during the game about it's not all on Seth. Some of this is on Milrow, and I'm not really sure, because a couple of those balls are rolled back there. I mean, it's something, whatever the issue is. Yeah, I think it really hurt yesterday. It hurt on the down there at the goal line at the end of the game. It was a bad snap. But I do think Milrow panicked a little bit. He had an opportunity there if he would have kind of followed the play design to maybe score. I think he panicked and ran right into the scrum. So
yeah,
that's the thing is the offensive line. I think Proctor, he hurt an ankle before Christmas. He's got some ligament issues in one of his ankles. I think that probably limited him some. But I was talking, Rob, to exchanging some text message with a longtime defense coordinator this morning. He was kind of explaining some things, what he saw from his perspective. And he said that there were opportunities that Alabama had on some of those sacks that Milrow took, that Milrow going to his hot receiver. He speculated Milrow didn't know where his hot receivers were. He said because, anytime you're in the personnel Alabama was in, 10 personnel is what he referred to it as. And he just said, look, you got to be able to see the blitz coming. You got to know where it's coming from. And you've got to be able to know where your hot receivers are. And he said it just seemed to him that Milroe did not have an idea of where he wanted to go with the ball in those situations.
Yeah, and that you hate to see that. In Michigan, again, they disguised a lot of what they did. But their defensive front was fast, and I think there were 5 sacks in the first half against Milroe. And now you look at this Alabama team. I still think Nick Saban will look back, and this may be his favorite team he ever coached. They accomplished a lot, but by Alabama's standards, they didn't win the national championship. They were in the 4-team playoff, but they're going to be back next year. They ain't going away. Milroe's coming back. The majority of this Alabama team is coming back, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to have a really good nucleus. They've got a lot of young talent. Obviously, I think, they're going to have probably, I assume Seth McLaughlin's probably done. I don't know. Maybe he comes back at center. Obviously, they're going to have to replace the right tackle. J.C. Latham is a really good player, but you've got some really other good players. You got Proctor back. You got Tyler Booker back at left guard. You've got right guard Jaden Roberts is back. They've got some young players that are really good players. So I think they'll be fine up front. You look in the backfield, I think they've got some really talented backs. Again, let's assume Roy Dale Williams and Jace McClellan are gone. I think the guy who's really a talent is number 22, Justice Haynes. We saw him yesterday. His vision, he can make things happen, just with his vision. He sees things and he makes cuts and gets yardage on his own. So he's a real talent. I think Jam Miller's really good. Be interesting to see about Richard Young, the true freshman, who I think's a high-quality back too, Rob. There is some buzz, just to be honest, not trying to stir up any speculation or rumors, because Nick Saban's really good at keeping players in his program. But, I'm hearing some buzz. Richard Young may actually be sniffing around to go somewhere else. But, we'll see. Maybe that doesn't happen. But defensively, yeah, they should be fine. I think they've got a lot of good young players on that side of the ball.
Well, where would Alabama go? They're loaded. They're going to need to find elite wide receivers. The standard from here for the next 1,000 years is going to be Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs III, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Waddle. And Caleb Burton, is not Caleb Burton. I'm drawing a blank on the Jermaine Burton. Yeah. Jermaine Burton. Jermaine Burton played wide receiver in high school, either with or nearby Bryce Young. That was a really strong combo. But, that's what now you look at an elite class in recruiting. The focus, if there's an elite position group on offense, it's all wide receivers now. Go back 10 or 15 years ago, it would have been the great running back class that you're bringing in. Let's talk about who Alabama's bringing in at the wideout positions going into next year.
Well, again, if they land Ryan Williams, he's a big time talent.
Yes.
They got Rico Scott from Philadelphia, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who had I think he put up about 25 TDs this year. It's a great program up there in Harrisburg. They've got Amari Jefferson out of Chattanooga. He's a really high quality player. He was one of the top players in the state of Tennessee. Aaron Hampton, Bubba Hampton out of Texas. He's a high quality player. He's a guy that kind of reminds me of Mechie in high school from the standpoint of he could play wide receiver or could play safety, extremely physical. That's what he reminds me of Mechie. Mechie was a real physical kid coming out of high school, and this Bubba Hampton's the same way. So, they've got receivers, and they've got some here. They've got some young ones here. They've got to find a way to get – they've got weapons. I'm telling you, Rob, they've got weapons, and I'm not really, trying to pinpoint it on anything in particular. They've got to find ways to get the ball to the Amari Nyblacks, the Kendrick Laws, some of the Isaiah Bond has had a really good year. Jalen Hell's a true freshman that showed a lot of promise. Again, I don't know what some of the other guys Kobe Prentice, he caught a ball yesterday. He's been a really good player when he's gotten opportunities. I think they've got the players at wide receiver. They're going to have to, I think that hopefully Milroe, after a year, becomes more comfortable in the passing game. He was good at times, yeah, but against the high quality defenses, he was, iffy at times. People may say, well, he was really good against Georgia. Well, he made some plays against Georgia as a passer, but he also missed several throws as a passer. And I think yesterday, he's a little bit limited as a passer. And, hopefully he continues to grow in that area because they need somebody who can distribute the football.
Yeah, you've got to be able to. And what do you think's going to happen? We already know that Tyler Buckner is going back to play lacrosse at Notre Dame. And I talked to a friend of mine's son who played on the Duke lacrosse team for the last 5 years. And he said, he'll be lucky to make the starting team when he goes back to Notre Dame because, of course, they played for the national championship back Memorial Day weekend in lacrosse. But hell of an athlete. What about Ty Simpson? Anybody else on that roster? Who do you see sticking around and who do you see maybe hitting the portal?
Well, I know there's a lot of buzz about Ty, leaving. I thought Ty made a lot of progress based on what we saw and some of the opportunities he got late in the year. I mean, I think he's a really high quality player. Whether or not he sticks, if he sticks here at Alabama or goes elsewhere, there's some scuttlebutt that a couple of SEC schools, one in particular, might be very interested in him. And again, you would understand why. I mean, he said, don't forget this, Rob. Jeff Levy recruited him at Ole Miss, and now he's at Mississippi State. I'm not saying that's he's going to end up there. I'm just saying don't forget that Ole Miss was really high on his list, and Levy had recruited him there. But now again, I don't know what Ty's going to do. I'd hope that he would stick it out, but we'll see. And I think the two young guys they got, Dylan Lonergan he's a lot of buzz about Dylan Lonergan. And then, of course, Julian Sayin, the true freshman's already in school. And you've got Eli Holstein, too. That'll be one to watch. I don't know what Eli's thinking, if he's going to stay or go, but that'll be another one to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Isn't it wild? You look at recruiting, the national reach of Alabama and the SEC. Of the top 15 players in the state of California in this recruiting cycle, 2 of the top 4 are signing with which school? Southern Cal, UCLA, or Alabama?
Well, I know, Alabama obviously got maybe I assume Julian Sayin was the number 1 player in the state. I don't know how they ranked him. I know he's one of the top 2 or 3 in the country overall by some of these services. And I guess the other one was, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, who's Xavier Browne, the corner.
Yep. Alabama will sign 2 of the top 4 players in the state of California. They already have. And then Oregon is signing 3 of the top 10. Southern Cal, 2 of them. And and then the top 15, Auburn signed, DeAndre Carter out of Mater D High School, Mother of God High School in Santa Ana. Wonder if their nickname is the Forest Fires. That's the Santa Ana Winds, thinking about that. But 8 of the top 15 players in the state of California, Rodney, signed with SEC schools. Only 2 of the top 15 signed with an in-state California school. Mainly, you're thinking Southern Cal, UCLA, Stanford, and Cal. That's pretty. That's incredible.
Really changed. Yeah, it's back in the day, it used to be such a regional game. It's just changed so much over the years. But the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s, with Pete Carroll there. But it was all those guys. And you could go all the way back. The California kids stayed at USC and UCLA, and maybe Stanford here and there. But man, it's really changed. How that's kind of become just they're going everywhere now.
Yeah.
Also now it doesn't seem like Texas and Texas A&M are doing a better job of keeping their guys, there in Texas. That was not the case here a few years ago. Now, Saban would go in and get 4 or 5 players out of the state of Texas every year. They were high quality players. But they're doing a better job of keeping their guys home.
Yeah. Well, you remember Todd Marinovich, the kid that was never allowed to have a McDonald's hamburger or drink a Coke or anything, any vices at all. Now, I doubt he would have been able to resist the temptation had there been a Crystal or a Taco Casa in his neighborhood, but I digress. But I think back, you're right, Pete Carroll, good grief, they got everybody. But the California is not going anywhere. 38 million people out there, and there's like almost 4 million kids in Northern California playing football. There's a lot. That's a state that just is always going to produce players. And I know it's easy to say, oh, everybody's leaving California. 380,000 people left last year. Well, if you're good with gazendas, math, that's 1% of the population. And then there's also people moving out there and people coming up from the border we don't even know about every day. Rodney, just got a few minutes left here on the Tider Insider, Tuscaloosa and Northport. 2 locations, May Veterinary Clinic open every day of the week. Sundays, drop off and pick up only 3 to 5 p.m. at Camp May Veterinary Clinic. Get out there, find them on our website, May Veterinary Clinic. Another thing, all these people, and let's face it, it's wishful thinking. You haven't gotten a memo, and I hadn't seen it. It's not going to happen. I don't see it happening, but anything's possible. Nick Saban, I think, is just going to double down. Now, the criticism is going to be, for the first time in a 3-year cycle since he's been the coach at Alabama, Alabama didn't win a national championship. Okay, it ain't for lack of trying. They've been in 8 of the 10 playoffs. What's the theme going to be, the narrative heading in to the 24 season now that we're welcoming Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC?
Well, let's see. I'm thinking there as you're saying that they haven't won it since 2020. They've had a historical run. I mean, it's never happened before. And you look at Michigan, if they win the national championship, they've won exactly a 1/2 of a national championship. How many years?
Since 1948.
Yeah, they've won 1/2 of a national championship.
Yeah.
Okay. Washington, I remember they shared it with who'd they share it with? Miami one year
in 1990.
Yeah, they shared.
Washington shared it with Georgia Tech.
Colorado, Georgia Tech. That's right, Georgia Tech. Bobby Ross.
Bobby Ross, so, VMI graduate, I might add.
Yeah. So, these things are hard to do. Yeah. I mean, people make a big deal out of, Alabama not winning a national championship, this 3-year period. It's the first time since Saban's been here. But, I mean, come on, these things aren't easy to do. And, but, again, I think that Alabama should be really strong next year. We talked about that. They've got a lot of good players coming back. But, Rob, I see you had something on your screen there a few seconds ago about Kelly Leak saying that, a lot of these SEC teams were getting stronger. It wasn't that Alabama was necessarily weaker, which maybe they are a little bit. But a lot of these SEC teams are, just stronger. Yeah. And I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it. So it's not just Alabama and LSU. You remember when Saban first got here, it was Alabama and LSU, or as Alabama versus Florida, overall in the SEC.
Yeah.
When he first got here. So, but now you've got Georgia, you got LSU strong. Auburn's trying to, kind of make a comeback. Tennessee strong. Ole Miss. I mean, look at all these programs that are really, playing high quality, SEC football. I mean, it's very competitive.
It is, and put things in perspective. Up to 1948, Michigan claims 10 national championships. From 1948 to 1997, that's 49 years, folks. All those great teams. Fritz Chrysler, Bo Schembechler's great run. He didn't ever win a national championship. Won a bunch of Big Ten titles. We all remember the 10-year war with him and Woody Hayes. But that's how hard it is. And from 1970 to the present, the Big Ten has won national championships. Ohio State won one in 2002. Michigan split one with Nebraska in 97. Again, Ohio State won one after Miami had won it. And then 20 minutes after the game, the official threw the flag. And you all know what happened there. Ohio State got the title. And can you imagine Ryan Day, the whining, and he probably would have wanted to have a brawl with the refs. But, and then 2014, the first year of the playoff, which ironically in 1936, I think Oregon and Ohio State were 1 and 2 in the final poll or whatever. The first ever AP, rankings was 1936. They played in 2014 for the national championship. Ohio State won that. So 2.5 national championships for the Big Ten since 1970. And the SEC's got, I think, 20. And you have to give Alabama credit. And Nick Saban is so competitive. That's the thing that will, he's thinking right now, how are we going to win it next year? And that's what you want your coaching staff to be. So, yeah, it's not that Alabama isn't good. They are. They were in the 14 playoff. And that game yesterday could have gone either way. But Nick Saban, did you notice when he said first time out, we had a play, second time out, we had a play, third time out, we had another play. Michigan, I mean, there was a lot of it was like a great poker match, a lot of poker faces going on out there, but went down to the last play.
Yeah.
That's what more can you ask for?
Really did. And the other game did too. I mean,
yeah,
unbelievable. How did that happen? I mean, Rob, the crazy thing about that, if Washington just kneels and they don't run the running back, he gets hurt, the clock stopped. Texas didn't have any timeouts.
Yeah.
And I mean, the guy gets hurt. And I mean, really the team that's ahead in that position, which is Washington, they're penalized because their guy got hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, that clock, man, it just seems like it should start running as soon as you get the guy off the field. But anyway, it gave Texas a lot of time to be able to move down the field. They would only had about 15 or 20 seconds maybe, but they got like 40 something. And they get down there in position and they just couldn't get it, in the end zone, which was incredible to me. But hey, that Penix, man, Michael Penix is, I really watched him more closely for the first time, last night. And the way he can avoid the rush in the pocket and keep his eyes downfield and make throws, he's got a strong arm. I mean, Rob, I'm just telling you, you got to have a quarterback who can execute the passing game. You got to have a quarterback who can execute the passing game. That's where it's at now. And, I think that's one thing that Alabama really, just consistently, I don't think that they've been able to do that well. This year they did it. Not, I almost said didn't do it well, but they against the better defenses, they didn't do it consistently enough to execute the passing game.
Yeah, and look, there's so much to talk about. We've run out of time, but man, the narrative going in now is the SEC been knocked off its perch, and the Big Ten is going to claim. Well, the Pac-12 will claim this one for perpetuity if Washington wins it. And if they win it, the Big Ten will say our newest member. And if Michigan wins it, their oldest member wins the national championship. But man, you think this ain't going to be fun on all the shows like Sidelines and all those other ones out there? You couldn't. I mean, I wanted an SEC team to win it. That's the way it goes. That just fuels more hunger to get better. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us, folks. Just remember, look around you and be grateful for what you have. Aesop's Fables says it best. The mole, the ass, and the ape. Mole talking about, the complaining of the mule and the complaining of the ape about what they have and don't have. He goes, I got to worry about y'all stepping on me. Be grateful for what you have. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Go out and do kind things for people every opportunity you get. All that you have, you can't take it with you. Go help people. God knows what you do. You don't have to put it all over, well, I did this or do that. Go help people make a positive difference. Make that your New Year's resolution. And Rodney, let them know how they can follow you and all the great work you do. And we are blessed to have you as part of this team. Cannot thank you enough. Look forward to another great year working with you. And as always, appreciate you taking time because you are super dad and super grandfather to a lot of family members. And we're blessed to have you.
All right, Rob, I appreciate it. I really do. It's TigerInsider.com. It's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card, or if you prefer, there is an address there to send a check. Gives you all our premium information, but our All Sports Forum, that's our community of Alabama fans there on TigerInsider.com. Rob, it is rolling right now. If you're an Alabama fan, you're not there. You're not reading all
all the commentary. I bet it's some incredible stuff. All right, let's just say this. Rodney Orr will be back with us next Tuesday. Until then, folks, have a great day. We are out of here.